Yeah, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Sheridan, who's a People Analytics and Technology Manager at Klick Health. So her and I actually met, I think, at like the very first People Analytics meetup back in January 2019, and she's been an avid member and attendee to all my events, and she's doing incredible work at Klick Health. And so when her and I were chatting, I kind of mentioned there's a lot of people really interested in this space in HR and the path to kind of building out that people analytics function. It's kind of cloudy. So I'm excited to introduce Liz and her topic today, which is the path of building a people analytics function. So Liz, I'll turn it over to you to share your screen and get started.
Great, thank you. And I wholeheartedly agree with Travis's experience. I think I have a feeling I'm a little earlier on in the journey, so hopefully my kind of explanation of where we've come so far kind of shows you where you can just start and kind of work with what you have and continue building towards that ultimate vision. Okay, so I believe you see my slides now.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so yeah, today I'm just going to walk through a little bit of context on what brought me to even start this journey into people analytics, some of the paths that we explored and kind of where we've come so far, and where we are now and where we hope to get to. So a bit of my background, I studied business and math in university with a specialization in computer science and marketing. And that naturally led me into digital marketing. And I started at Klick Health. And so we are the world's largest independent full service marketing agency and commercialization partner in life sciences. And we're headquartered in Toronto. We have offices in New York and Philly, as well as employees throughout the US and North America centered around our clients. And we're very data-driven in our culture and people-focused, which was a natural fit for giving me the chance to move into the people analytics space and try to build something out. My first roles at Klick were in email marketing, data operations, and then I moved into more of a BA role where I acted as a translator and tried to take the client vision and strategy and then translating that and trying to implement that into technical solutions. So kind of that in between. And then about just around 2 years ago, I realized I was ready for a change, and I discovered the field of people analytics and realized that kind of pairs the people side with my background in data, and I was really excited about the opportunity to explore this field. So that moved me into my role within the people team. So I brought kind of that data perspective into what our people operations are, and there's kind of lots of potential for where we hope that could go. So I started off with a blank slate. So pretend this computer is empty, because that's when I first moved over, that's what it was like. We had this vague vision of people analytics where you can have hypotheses and run models and predictions and find correlations and learn from the data in order to make better people decisions. But when I first moved over, where do you begin? It's a little bit daunting. So some of the things I started with, I did basically a discovery phase where I explored what data we have at the company, what tools and software do we have that I can leverage, what experience do I have, what skills can I use that I can apply in this setting, and what other teams within the company and allies can I build that I could tap into their experience. And then outside of the company with networking and kind of finding other people who are also going through that journey. So I was at the very first People Analytics meetup that Julia and Amna hosted. And I'd like to say I've been a very loyal member since then. If there were a badge, I would hopefully get one.
You'd be number one.
And then taking kind of those discoveries and tying that back to the company priorities and what the team needed to really leverage that experience and try to create value and tangible outcomes for the team. So here are some examples of where I started to just try to get a sense of the landscape and learnings and what should I be doing to kind of help build towards that vision. Early on in my journey, I was able to attend a Human Capital Institute course on analytics for talent management. And that really helped me to basically confirm my initial path that I was heading in the right direction. It provided me with some HR context because that was a new field for me. I secretly went into that course hoping that there was a magic formula, that they're just going to tell you that this is how you define a KPI for all of these areas in HR, and this is the formula, and you plug this data in, and then you have your answer. That doesn't exist. My key takeaway really is that you need to tailor it for your own business and your own priorities, and leverage what tools and expertise is available to you. So it really is a unique situation, and basically it's more the thought process that you have to have to continue with your journey. They also really reinforced the importance of taking action, and it's easy to have a really natural curiosity when there's kind of all this potential that you could do with people data, but it's important to look at how are you going to act on that data. How does it create value if you were to take all of that time to then explore and put together that insight? So that was definitely a great takeaway. Some of the other items or logos on the screen, it's definitely not an exhaustive example, but these are some of the places I was finding information as well to understand some of the industry trends and get ideas for things that I could tackle myself. Vizier's already been mentioned. They do have a great section on their website with a lot of white papers, as well as LinkedIn has lots of thought leaders. David Green has a podcast, and you can sign up for emails. He posts every month a monthly roll-up of articles in people analytics. So I found all of those sources very useful. And speaking of David Green, this is one of his models that he released back in the fall of 2018. So it was early on in my journey, and I was starting to explore and kind of understanding the landscape at my company and kind of what is people analytics. And this model actually structures it very well. And it's kind of about the foundation, the resources and technology and tools and skills you need to have, as well as tying in with the value and priorities. So there's a really great video that I will send the link out afterwards in the chat if people want to follow up and watch it. It's about 5 minutes long. And he and Jonathan Ferrer are the co-creators of this model, and they do an explanation of their thought process when creating it. So some examples of early stages, how I was building the foundation. Our company actually has an enterprise operating system called Genome, and it was built in-house. We've won awards, and we've actually commercialized it for external companies that use it. But inside, I was really trying to find ways to tap into some of the features that we weren't fully using. And then also, before I joined the team, I was the kind of first data-minded person who came onto the team. So some of the operations were managed manually. So I was able to look at there was an example of a spreadsheet where people were signing up for in-person workshops. And I helped to automate that using Zapier to then connect the Google form over to a calendar invite so that our employee would have that invite directly sent to them, and it would save some time for our team. And then the other two diagrams on the right are some of my early stage thinking. So the pink one is around prioritization. So when you have various ideas for all of these analytics projects that you could take on, how do you start and where do you begin? So it was really at that time I was looking for the low-hanging fruit of an initiative that I could take on that would have a high potential impact and would be lower effort. And then in terms of the bottom one here, that's about privacy and really discussions that we were trying to establish guide rails and make sure that we don't take on any projects that cross any bounds or kind of protecting the privacy of employees. So this was an early representation of some of our thought process around case by case. When a project is initiated, how would you assess where that fits? And is the data more sensitive? What's the purpose of the data? And then how is it aggregated might be a factor as well in terms of if you're looking at individual personal data versus aggregating into groups or segments. So all of that kind of early stages was kind of exploring, finding tangible ways to connect the dots and kind of apply the tools and skills to create value for the team. And I found that I had emerging themes within my role. So I sort of call these role zones, where one of kind of the foundational layer was really about just the data foundation that we had to work with and the tools, the kind of how efficient could we could we create visualizations? Did we have the technology available? So exploring all of the visualization tools or what's out there, making sure the data is clean, it's accurate, augmenting the data. So are there any places where we have gaps in the data that we could try to fill in? And so that was essentially usually the first priority that I would focus on, while still looking at these other categories to try to lean into those as well as we built towards that people analytics vision. And ultimately having a stronger basis of data and technology would allow you to then create even more scalable and efficient core reporting dashboards, ad hoc insights, or even getting into more sophisticated data exploration, and hopefully at some point partnering with our data science team and really getting into some more meaningful insights. So from kind of where we were here, the next place that we went on the journey, while I was optimizing that current state and kind of finding the small tangible ways to help improve things, we also zoomed out and we were looking further ahead and thinking, what are the kind of bigger gaps and areas that we might have an opportunity to invest in external software to help to leap us forward in that space? So these were essentially HR technology has all of these, there's lots of vendors in all of these pillars. And for our company at the time, we realized the priority for us was recruiting, and then we turned to learning next. My example of the spreadsheet where we were managing our workshop signups for classroom training, that's why we identified learning is probably a good area that we should maybe look at what technology's out there, and it might really help to augment our data and improve the company experience and move forward our processes. So on the right here, this is a slide by Josh Burson. He's definitely one of the thought leaders in this area. He's done keynotes, and he has his own website and blog available where he does a lot of discussion on industry trends. So this is kind of a view of what your kind of software can look like. So you have perhaps an experience platform that ties all of the technology together, and then you have a stack of various platforms or tools that run the various pieces, supporting the different teams and guiding employees along their journeys. And here is a sampling of some of the vendors that he highlights. So it's a very busy space. So we definitely used some of his research to help to guide our process. And we kicked off a software assessment and narrowed down from the recruiting standpoint and from learning. We narrowed down vendors, we went through demos, we refined our requirements and moved on to selection and then implementation. So that's been kind of our journey the past year in a nutshell. And now we're getting into the stage where we have more of this data augmented and available to us. And now how do we start leveraging it and kind of moving into the next phase of how do we really kind of pull those insights together and really learn from them? So I'm starting to lean more into this side of actually getting into tangible analytics that can provide value. So this is just sort of a thought process on various approaches of how I've been picturing it in my mind in terms of how we could pull insights, gain access to dashboards. So this box here on the left, you kind of have your raw data. Any of the HR software technologies that are being used, quite often they're going to come with an out-of-the-box reporting system. So you can, like if it's an ATS, you can look into your candidate reports and see all of the kind of very detailed roll-ups, and that can be accessible to any of the users of that system. So out of the box, there are some really great reports, and it kind of takes you right from the raw data of the system all the way right to the visualization. Then there's also what was mentioned before, some of those vendors that help to tie your data together. They manage maybe the transformation of it and kind of building out the end visualizations for you. There's also managed services where you basically hire them and they are an external team of, it's like your external people analytics team. So you can kind of have that as well. And then the bottom section is a way that you could basically do these stages yourself. So especially if your company had access to development teams who could help support with kind of setting up the architecture of the data, then what you could do is basically take all of your data from various places, connect it through to these separate tools, and then build out the visualization on your own. So Power BI would be an example, Tableau, Google Data Studio is one that I've worked with, Amazon QuickSight. So actually what I'm going to do next is a very quick sample of Google Data Studio. So I'm going to start with, what I've done is created a very simple employee data file with a few different attributes. We have start date and a unique identifier. So this was my starting point. And then I'm going to go over to Google Data Studio, and I'm just going to import a new data source. Go to Google Sheets. Then, okay, what this will look like. Oh, there it comes. Let's see. This one here. So within a few clicks, we now have this data available. So I've loaded this before, and I've just adjusted. You can basically label the various data types for any of the fields you're bringing in. And then you just click Create Report, and you end up over here in a dashboard. And really, there's a little bit of a learning curve on this interface. Any other BI tool or visualization tools have a similar one where essentially they'll use dimensions and metrics. So there's a learning curve, but I did find Google Data Studio was quite accessible and fairly easy to start to pick up and just to play around and drag and drop with your data. So yeah, you can kind of create lots of different types of charts. You can change the coloring. You can really configure it to have the exact look that you want. And this was another great tool to kind of have at hand to be able to visualize and bring more meaning to data rather than just a spreadsheet, which is sometimes hard to pull out of. One of the things too, the more complex you get with the data and the more you tie it together, that definitely takes more time. So you think that this kind of the end result, it really, that's kind of what you want to get to. But my journey the last few months has been actually tying a lot of the data together and working with BigQuery, another Google product that integrates into here, to structure the data in the way that we wanted it to come out at the end for our business users. And another benefit, so early on in my journey, I was using just kind of Excel spreadsheets and creating reports. The benefit here is that it can directly tie to a database. So we've connected our genome data into BigQuery, and now we're able to access that data, and it really minimizes, there's no more manual work in order to refresh the reports. So that's just one kind of quick, tangible example of kind of how we can kind of start to use some of those tools to help build out our insights and analytics. So then just to round that out, reflecting back on my journey, so it started really with discovery phase, laying the foundation, optimizing that current state, and kind of looking for low-hanging fruit. Then we kind of moved more into augmenting the data and the tools, refining our HR tech roadmap. And now I think we're kind of moving into that next phase of hopefully moving up that analytics continuum here and kind of getting into more advanced insights and maybe partnering with data science experts in our company, as well as scalability. So trying to, right now those dashboards are shared mostly internally with our people practices team, but actually kind of scaling that out and more of a data democratization to have more insights available to more people. Thank you.